Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hi, Ricky. Welcome to the Quest podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Todd.
I'm excited about this episode today. I'm really intrigued by what you do. So just to kind of run down to my listeners a little about you, you've documented some of the wildest storms on the planet. You're a tornado hunter. You're an outdoor adventurer. We often see you on a motorcycle, dirt bike, on ski mobiles, on surfboards. You're climbing, you're rappelling, you're diving. I could probably go on and on about this, all the stuff that you do. So I think my first question for you really is, when did this lust for adventure first strike you?
Not to be corny about it, but I did start as a kid. My parents were outdoors people. I grew up in rural Canada. And so we spent a lot of time dirt biking, snowboarding, and everything was outdoor sports. And every year my parents would take off about 2 months off of work, and we would take our RV and travel all over North America. And with that, doing adventures and camping. And that's really where my love and my passion for exploring and new things and find that excitement really came in. And it really all started at home.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk about young Ricky. What was your childhood like? Like, did you have a big family? Like, what was it like for you? Did you grow up spiritual and religious? Did you when was your first dirt bike? Get into all that stuff for me.
Okay, so I'll do my best. So my mom was an RCMP officer. So I'm from Canada, but for those from the States, RCMP is Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And so that's our rural police. Now, cities have their own police forces, but for rural Canada, the government, the national government, federal government handles that police force. And so my mom worked for that police force. And part of the rule is every 5 years you have to move. And that's so that the police don't become best friends and start, giving everybody an easy ride. Yeah. And so I would move around every 5 years. And I grew up mostly in small towns around 1,000 people or so. And I'm not joking, 1,000 people, like, everybody, all their problems. But I really liked it. I loved growing up in small towns. And it was this that brought safety. We were friends with everybody. Every day we're out after school, building dirt bike jumps, building snowboard jumps, out playing on the outdoor hockey rink. And we could stay there till 9, 10, 11 p.m. way after dark because it was safe. And so I grew up, moving around small town, meeting lots of people, like-minded people who are into these kind of sports. Religious-wise, my dad is religious. And he took us kids, as kids, there's 4 of us siblings. And he took us kids to church, till I was about 11, 12 years old. And then we just, to each their own. But for me, I stopped buying into it. It wasn't quite for me. And that was it. I really found my, I do believe in a higher being. I do believe in the universe. There's more than we can see. There's more than we can understand. I definitely believe that. But yeah, that was, it's really, not too much more complex than that.
Were you a kid who had a lot of broken bones?
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I was just at the doctor yesterday, and they asked you to list those things. There's too many. I got, well over 30 broken bones and torn this and torn that. And you definitely take a few tumbles doing this line of work.
What does your family think about your dangerous hobbies?
All the outdoor sports, they definitely understand, and they see my passion for it. Storm chasing would be the most risky thing I do. Now, while we do everything we can to mitigate that risk, a lot of times I liken storm chasing to kind of climbing in a cage with a bear or maybe a bull. Sure. And you kind of you have an idea what might happen, but you're not completely sure. And so when it comes to storm chasing, my family does get nervous. And so, with my parents and with my wife over the years, I call before we get into a big setup. And the reason for that is not sort of not to get dark, but in case things go
Oh yeah,
sideways.
yeah.
And then we have had close calls. One of them was we were caught inside the world's largest tornado. Now it could have been any tornado, but it turned out to be the world's largest tornado. And that day I didn't call home beforehand, and so now it's almost become a superstition as well. Like if I call home before, it pretty much guarantees I'm not going to get
Mm.
caught in a tornado. So
I was going to bring up some of the craziest weather in a little bit, but now that you brought it up, you talked about that tornado. Tell me that story. Tell me the story about that tornado.
that was 10 years ago now. 10 years ago, 2013, May 31st, 2013. And it was a tornado that happened in Oklahoma. And so Oklahoma, it's right in the heart of Tornado Alley. And if people aren't familiar with Tornado Alley, it pretty much starts off in Texas and runs up through the center, up to like North Dakota, South Dakota. And Tornado Alley is an area in the world where the most tornadoes happen. An average of 1,300 to 1,500 tornadoes a year happen in Tornado Alley. And the biggest and most scariest tornadoes in the world happen in Tornado Alley. And the reason why versus anywhere else, whether it's Europe or Argentina or Australia, the reason why they happen the way they do in the US is, first of all, you have the right landscape for it. You have the plains running up nearly the whole way up the center. You have the mountains. If you look at the map, you have the mountains on the left-hand side, and that helps for the cold air rushing in, because it really is cold air and hot air. And so, yeah, so it's the right weather ingredients. You have the right landscape. So, pardon me, we're in Tornado Alley. We're in Oklahoma. It's in the heart of Tornado Alley. This is where the biggest tornadoes in the world happen. And so May 31st, 2013, we're down there. They come out with the forecast, and they're saying it's going to be a very heavy day for weather. And this is nothing out of the ordinary for us. This is what we're after. But we're out there. We see a tornado touch down in the middle of an open field. That's exactly what we're after. And this tornado starts to grow a little bit. Everything's looking really good. And then something really odd happened, is that essentially the sky fell to the ground.
Mm.
And it never, up until that point, it's never happened to me. And ever since then, it hasn't happened to me. And the storms that create tornadoes are called supercells. And so these supercell storms have a spinning air mass inside of them, and that spinning air mass is called a mesocyclone. I won't go too deep on the lingo, but we have the spinning air mass inside the supercell, and that drops down a tornado. And so this tornado was on the ground in this situation. This mesocyclone is meant to stay up in the sky. This mesocyclone, and we get right underneath that mesocyclone, because that mesocyclone is big. And so we get underneath that mesocyclone that's run of the mill. We get beside that tornado. The sky, the clouds kept feeling like they're getting lower and lower, and this feeling really odd, but we weren't sure what to make of it. We shouldn't have been in a dangerous spot, but then it ended up coming right down to the ground. So this whole mesocyclone, the whole storm dropped right to the ground, and it ended up being the world's largest tornado, over 2.6 miles wide, over 4 kilometers wide. Where the average tornado, the usual tornadoes that we go after might be a half mile wide, maybe a mile wide, but over 2.6 miles wide. I remember when we finally got out of it and we looked back, I couldn't see the left edge or the right edge. Like I couldn't see where this tornado stopped.
Wow. That's incredible. And when you go out to have an adventure on a day like that, you have no idea that you'll see something history making like that. Like that's incredible.
Yeah, like on that comment, I would say that's the toughest thing with storm chasing. And with storm chasing, we chase in the springs. We chase April, May, June. This year I did just over 100 days of storm chasing. Every day you have to prepare as if it's the biggest day of your life, because it might be. And so I'm talking from whatever your superstitions are. If you want to get up and work out and get your mind in the right frame, and then have all the cameras ready to go, and you put all this work in, and you show up, and sometimes it does go off, but lots of times it doesn't. And you show up and it's just blue skies, because there's so many ingredients it takes to make these storms. And so that is the tough thing with chasing. And like we've had times where we'll go 2-3 weeks of a dry run, like every day preparing, putting all this work in, and nothing happens. And that's where you have to be really careful to not become complacent, because the one day you do become complacent is when all hell can break loose.
How old were you when you evolved this interest in wanting to chase tornadoes? Do you remember that day? Was it like, hey, I think I want to go out and see what I see. When did that happen for you?
Yeah, it's there's nothing romantic to it. You'll talk to other storm chasers and they'll say they grew up loving storms and they watched Twister every day of their life. What happened was I was 25 at the time, and I was living in the mountains up here in Canada, being a ski bum, and so I was coaching snowboarding, and I was out. I've always been a photographer, so I was doing that and doing backcountry sports and things like that. And one day I get a call from a guy I used to work with, storm chasing. His name was Greg. He's like, "Hey man, I got your name from another friend. This spring we need a driver for storm chasing. Would you be interested?" I was like, "All right, what are you talking about? What's storm chasing?" And and so then he sent me a YouTube link of and this this is 2012, so YouTube is still in its infancy, and so he sends me this YouTube link, and I see a tornado, and I was like, "Oh, I had no idea people did that." And so it was 2 months later, I found myself in the driver's seat for this team of storm chasers, and I thought I was only going to go for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then move on to the next adventure. But I'll never forget, I saw that first week going out, I saw my first tornado, and it was just the coolest thing I've ever seen, the most powerful, the most majestic, most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was terrifying. It was amazing. It was all these mixed emotions, and it was. Yeah, I'll never forget that evening. We're sitting down, we're having a steak dinner. It's a tradition, a superstition within storm chasing that if you catch a tornado, you have to have a steak dinner. The team has a steak dinner, and we're having this steak dinner. And I had this feeling in my gut that I found my purpose. This is what I was meant to do. And so I quit everything I was doing, and I just poured my heart and soul into storm chasing, and still doing that.
I grew up in the Midwest, in Indiana, and I lived for a while in Alabama, which is like the kind of probably the most eastern part of Tornado Alley, I think, is kind of northern Alabama there. So
For
people
sure.
really, were heavily concerned about tornadoes there. And although I've never been in a tornado, I've been very near tornadoes within a few miles of me.
You've seen the tornadoes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Henryville,
wow.
Indiana actually had a terrible tornado about 10 years ago. And that was
Okay.
right near me at that time. I've also lived in California where we would get earthquakes, right? And it was always an
Yeah.
interesting dynamic to me how terrified people were of earthquakes and tornadoes. But even to this day, being in both types of situations, tornadoes still terrify me more than anything because they're just so unpredictable. The ground shaking, I can live with. The tornadoes not knowing if they're just going to turn on a dime and go a different direction and what kind of damage they'll do is frightening. It's terrifying.
For sure, and especially when you're in treed areas like Alabama, we have we call it the jungle, and I've done it. I've storm chased over there a few times, but I refuse to do it now. It's so scary, and I can't. And it's scary when we are looking for it. I can't imagine when you're not looking for it and you're just living there, because with trees everywhere, you can only see so much. So that's why I like being on the open plains. I can see it forever.
Yeah. And it's odd, and I often wonder, if Tornado Alley is shifting to some extent, because we've seen tornadoes now in Atlanta, they're in Tennessee, they're getting further into the Midwest and the Southeast now.
Yeah, that's a super good point. And that's funny. That's probably the biggest topic of conversation this year, is that Tornado Alley is moving. And so, but interesting story. We are seeing more tornadoes towards the east. That definitely is happening. You're correct. And that is abnormal. But even more so, we're seeing more tornadoes to the west. In fact, LA got a tornado this year.
Yeah.
Now, not that far west. Like I'm more talking like New Mexico, Colorado. But this year, normally I would expect to spend nearly all my time in Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. I did not chase one day in Oklahoma this year, and I only did a few days in Nebraska and Kansas. The rest was New Mexico, Colorado, and that western area. And so Tornado Alley is moving a little bit both directions. And so it's, if somebody's listening, usually the next thing that comes up is like, well, is that climate change? Well, I have a marketing degree, and so I have no grounds to tell you about climate change, but something is different. This, like the numbers show that, and it's hard. You can't deny the chaotic climate we're having with like the hot weather and the fires, like
Yeah.
Canada. Oh, I know you guys got our smoke, but like nearly all of Canada was on fire for
Yeah.
nearly all summer
Yeah,
this
I had
year.
to leave my house in New York for quite a bit of time this year because of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Uh,
crazy. Yeah, you guys got it really bad in New York. Yeah.
Now, this may seem like a stupid question, but does Canada get tornadoes?
100%. Actually, one of the biggest tornadoes that happened in North America this year happened in
Mm.
Canada. Yeah. And so Canada will get an average of, and because it's right above like the North Dakota, Montana area. And so we'll get an average of about 200 to 300 tornadoes a year, but most of them are
Mhm.
small. And we're not nearly as populated as what you guys are. And so lots of times they just don't get seen because they're out in the middle of a field that nobody is around. And, but once in a while we do get big tornadoes. And yeah, so we had an EF4 here this year. And, is tornadoes on a scale of 0 to 5, EF0 to EF5, and EF4. Sorry, EF0 being the smallest, 5 being the biggest. We had an EF4 up here, and about 1% of tornadoes are EF4s.
Now, have you chased tornadoes successfully in Canada?
Yes, yeah, about 90% of my work is in the
Mhm.
States. Just the storms are better, they're more picturesque. But one, I chase storms in Canada because it's close to home, and two is because I have to because I'm a Canadian storm chaser. Like
Sure.
if big tornadoes happen here, I have to
You
be there.
you have to cover it, don't you?
Yeah, otherwise, like I never live it
They're going
down,
to take your
especially with
tornado
like
hunter card away from you.
that's what it feels like.
um,
Yeah.
so how important is it to know the weather? I mean, you said you have a marketing degree. You don't have a degree in meteorology. Like, but how much do you need to know the weather to do this?
11 years ago when I started, luckily I got to come up underneath two guys who really knew what they were
Mhm.
doing and they had years of experience in it. And so they could point me what to look at, and they did their own forecasting and they taught me how to do that as well. And so you're looking at all these different variables of like wind shear and humidity and how these variables play into it. And there was some predicting software out there that worked like on historical data and bringing that into using an algorithm. And over the years, it's just gotten better. And with AI, actually, it's gotten a lot better. And now it is so far advanced that 11 years ago, some of the software we would use, like the software we would use in our truck, for example, the subscription was $3,000 US a month. Now that exact same piece of software can go on your phone for $10, a $10 app,
Wow.
an annual $10 fee. Yeah. And it's much more advanced. So now like the apps out there, they really hold your hand, like for us storm chasers, because like on the GPS, they'll say, okay, you're here. The tornado is expected to come here. It's expected to be this size, have this big of hail. This is where the lightning's happening. This is where that tornado is going, and this is how fast it is going. And even the day before, the predictive models will try to forecast where these storms are going to be. And we always have a look at that. But you can't put all your eggs in that basket. But we do watch that because if it proves right over and over again, will you be stupid to ignore that? And this year, they nailed it like 99% of the time. So not only like in the moment is it all like spelled out for us, the day before they're nearly handing it to us, which is really cool from a storm chasing perspective. But it's also like when I first started, there was 3 teams, 2 US teams and 1 Canadian team. And now, there's like, I would say there's about, I don't know, I would say about 30, 40 professional teams and, but thousands of individuals coming out on the weekend. It's a big part of the culture, but these barriers to entry, now the software is cheaper. You have these devices with you. You don't have to carry your laptop. You can just have your phone. It's getting people into sticky situations because people are going out by themselves when you have to storm chase as a team because there's so many moving parts and people going out by themselves. They're young and I can appreciate it. They have that curiosity. They see other people doing it. But this year there was many, how to put it, like there's many instances where there's many
Mhm.
fatalities that people got too close to these dangerous tornadoes without the experience, without a team. There's just too many variables they weren't ready for. And it's fair. They didn't have the experience, but that's what,
Let's talk
like
about
anything.
let's talk about the danger in this. You mentioned there were some fatalities. For those people who might not be aware of the destructive power of these tornadoes, it's not so much maybe necessarily someone's getting, swept away by the tornado. Is it just the debris that kills people? Like, tell me about that. Tell me about the dangers of getting too close.
Yeah, the way I picture it, it's like a massive blender.
Mm.
And so this tornado, when you're close to it, it's going to throw things at you. If it hits, if it hits trees, if it hits a building, that debris is going to come flying at you. And so that 100%, that is part of the danger. And then for us at this point, like, that's the biggest danger, because we're not getting close enough to get caught in the tornado. It's not our goal, and we don't. And there's certain strategies that you park yourself behind the tornado, and the tornado moves in a certain direction. But danger wise, though, if you get too close, and this is a trend. This is happening. The storm chasers are pushing to who can get closer, and it very much is like interacting with the blender. It doesn't matter how tough your car is. It's going to lift you up. It's going to roll you. All sorts of things can happen. Now, with saying that, there's a good chance there's somebody listening to this, and if you are a storm fanatic, then you know about a vehicle called the Dominator. The Dominator is this big steel beast tank. It's operated by Reed Timmer and Jordan Hall, both good friends. Now, they do drive through tornadoes. This year they went through an EF2 tornado. Crazy footage, and they got it on a drone shot. It's one of my favorite storm shots ever. Now, they can do it, but I refuse to get in that with them. Like, I just and I know we've been inside a tornado once, and it was just a fluke that we got out. It's tornadoes, they're so destructive. They can destroy anything.
Yeah. And do you find that, like, what kind of damage will the vehicle take? I mean, will things pierce the vehicle, or are the winds that strong? Can it, you always hear the kind of the joke about, a toothpick will go through a person, big of a tornado, is that true?
100%.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Like, super odd things we've seen in that regard over the years. Because, about 50% of the tornadoes that we chase do hit a populated center, but you wouldn't know that having a look at our content, because as soon as that happens, we're putting down the cameras. We're not out there by any means to sensationalize that, and I'm not interested in that at all. But we're there to help, and it's kind of the unwritten code that if you're going to be there to storm chase it, if it does, we want to see it in the middle of an open field, but people's lives are affected. We're trained in search and rescue. We're trained in first aid, so we're there to help, and so we do get to see those scenes, and we've seen like pieces of straw hammered into a tree, straight in, like straw going into a tree. And so the idea of a toothpick going to a person, like anything you've heard of, anything you can imagine, it can happen inside a tornado. Yeah. Because the wind speeds can be, upwards of 200, 300 miles an hour.
Wow. Let's talk about, you mentioned the kind of that tank vehicle a little while ago. Let's talk about Brutus. Tell me how your adventure truck came to be, how you have that. Tell people about this truck.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you're building a storm chasing vehicle, you have two avenues that you can go down. You can go that tank route. And so they got big steel sheeting on there. It's a double axle dually. So they're guzzling gas and they can get stuck really easy. And also their turning radius is really tough. They really struggle with that as well. And so, sometimes with storm chasing, we got to whip a turn really quick. Sometimes we got to hit ditches. So it depends on the way you chase storms. And so I built 3 different storm chasing vehicles over the years, and while that tank idea does seem like a lot of fun, we build our trucks so they're tough as nails, and they're off-roading units. And so over the years we've had half tons, and this year we're rocking. We built up a 3/4 ton, so we're rocking an F250. It's got a full bulletproof coating from Line-X, and so it's fully sprayed in Line-X. And then on our windshield, we run something called Exo Shield. Now that's not bulletproof. You can't take necessarily a gun to that, but we can get hit by like baseball size hail, and that's not breaking our windows.
Wow.
And so our windows are reinforced. Our truck is definitely reinforced. We got heavy duty front and back steel bumpers. We have a slight lift on the vehicle just so we can get bigger tires. And the bigger tires, so when we really hit the mud holes, and sometimes it gets really deep, this truck can truck on through. And we're also there to help other people. Lots of times we'll be hammering down a washed out road, and all of a sudden we see another storm chaser and they've hit the ditch. That's when we stop, we pull out the winch, we get them out, get them to safety, and then we keep moving. And we've learned that over the years that we want to be that resource for people, because it really sucks when you have to pass them by because you're not able to help them. So we're out there. So our truck can go absolutely anywhere at any speed, whether it's getting to the tornado or away from the tornado, and also out there to help people with our truck.
Wow. That's incredible. That's great. Brutus is impressive. For those of you that want to see it, go to Ricky's website, because there's a lot of pictures, a lot of data about Brutus on there, which is really cool. Ricky, outside of tornadoes, I want to know, what's the craziest weather that you've ever experienced that's not a tornado?
Ooh, outside of tornadoes. So within storms, there's a few, often when we talk storm chasing, tornadoes come up first. And absolutely, that makes sense. But to tell you the truth, my favorite part of storm chasing is the shelf clouds we get to see. And so these storms, when they start to breathe out, they create these really cool structures on the front of these supercells. And it nearly looks like an alien spaceship. And every storm looks different. And if you want to see some of these images, if you head to my website, tornadowatch.com, or if you find me on social media at Ricky Forbes, you can see some of these images I'm talking about. Is they look like they're from out of this world. And so within the storm chasing world, we have a few different categories. So we have tornadoes that we go after. We have these really cool shelf clouds. We call them motherships. Something else is I really enjoy is mammatus clouds, and they're bubbly clouds that go across the whole sky, and also looks otherworldly. It looks really, really neat. And then the lightning shows that we get to see. The lightning shows are just unreal. And this year we really grateful. Had some unbelievable lightning shows where it's just going off every second for like nearly 2-3 hours. Just some of the coolest stuff ever. And so within the storm chasing world, those would be the main 4 categories that we're after: tornadoes, motherships, mammatus clouds, and lightning.
Oh, that's great. Now, where you're at in Canada, do you get to see auroras where you're at? Or are you too far south for that?
Oh, we in the perfect spot for auroras. And in this past year also has been some of the best auroras.
But that's got to be better than the shelf clouds, right? Like I would think, I've not seen auroras, but I would think that that's got to be the most impressive thing, right?
Todd, I hate to put salt in the wound, but I've grown up with it.
So you're used to it, yeah.
When we're out playing hockey, as a kid, when we're out snowboarding, we built like a snowboard ramp behind my parents' house. At least one night a week, it's over top of us. And we don't have we never had many lights in town. So there's no light pollution. And so they would be dancing above us. And, once in a while you look up and you're like, oh, cool, a new color, whether it's purple or green or red, whatever it might be. But, and now I would say I see them like inadvertently. I see them at least once a month. If I'm driving around or whatever it might be, if I'm driving home, I'll see them out. But lately some real powerful solar flares have been coming in, creating some unreal aurora. Like last year we had some, I think it was March or April, where it felt like the aurora was coming right to the ground. Wow. Like you could smell it. It was, really beautiful up here.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen, I've seen some shelf clouds. I've seen some interesting stuff like that. One of the things that seems kind of lame by comparison, but I kind of think it's neat when it rains sideways or it snows sideways, especially in Texas. You get that a lot there, a lot of sideways precipitation, which is really weird to see. But I think always that kind of thing is always very interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree. And like within that rain area, is when you see those storms and you see like a rain shaft coming right down to the ground, like such a clean cut, powerful force of water just dumping out of this cloud. And then it creates something. If you, next time you see that happening, if you look towards the bottom of it, if you see that it's curling out, we call that a rain foot. And that just speaks to the velocity. If the rain's coming really hard down, it's kind of like a waterfall, that it starts to spray out. But really cool stuff. And you definitely see that in Texas, Arizona, that kind of thing.
You do so much so much stuff, just recreationally, what you do, your surfing, your motorcycles, dirt bikes, all of this stuff. And then you throw the storm chasing on top of it. What do you get out of these extreme experiences? Is this a high for you? Are you an adrenaline junkie? Is it a feeling of cheating death? Like what is it about it that is attractive to you?
So I'm 37 now. When I was 19 and 20, that area, it was the adrenaline. It was the adrenaline. It was the unknown. Like I love being uncomfortable. I love being scared, and having to push myself through that. Like I don't enjoy. Like I hate heights, and I still do hate heights. Like if you ask me to look over, I'll look over once, and that'll be it. That kind of thing. But it's really developed, and it started in my late 20s, and it's definitely now, it's a spirituality for me, whether it's the outdoors. If we're out in the mountains, and just thinking about it, you got crisp white snow, and you got the trees, and you can hear the wind going through the trees, and the sun is shining. And you're getting lost out there. That's what I
See,
love. Like you
you
just
do
be
have a
connected with.
spirituality. See?
Yeah. We've come full circle. And I feel that with storms, even more so when we're underneath these storms, it feels like they're a living
Mhm.
organism. Because over the years, I've come to understand the science of what's happening up there. I can see it breathing in because air is fuel for these storms. And it's breathing in, and I can see on radar that these storms are, 50, 60, sometimes 70,000 feet tall, 70,000 feet tall. Like that's a mountain up in the air. Like most airplanes fly at like 35,000 feet. So 70,000 feet tall storms, and we're underneath it, and we can see the clouds boiling and moving around. It kind of looks like an active ocean, and you see the colors, the blacks and the blues and the greens. And then when it starts to really pick up in rotation, and it starts to get more active, the clouds will start to like reach out, and it feels like hands coming down. They'll come right down to the ground and like slap you right in the face. And it's just the coolest thing. Like how you might, if you ever get to see a mountain, like how you might feel small beside a mountain. That's how we feel beside these storms. Like it feels like we get to dance with a giant, and getting to be there and experience, like, and it's fleeting. Like it doesn't last very long. Sometimes what we get to see is only there for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe an hour, that kind of thing. And so it's for this fleeting moment that we get to be here and be a part of this and dance with this giant. And then I do have a lot of passion in my photography and videography, and trying to capture that and show it to you, and hopefully be able to communicate like how I feel about it to you. I find that a challenge as well, because trust me, I've screwed up just as many photos and videos as the ones that have turned out. And so, and that's also frustrating because we wait all year long, and I drive hours and hours. Like this year, I put on over 70,000 miles in 100 days. And when you put all of your money, you put all of your time, like I have 2 kids at home, I have a wife, I'm putting this all on the line. I have like, and sometimes that it is only a 5-minute window.
Mhm.
And in that 5-minute window, everything has to align. And I have so much I have to do in that 5 minutes. I have to do it perfectly. Like I even like in the days leading up, like I will practice what I know I need to do between the camera work and everything else. Like there's so many different pieces we need. And so, sorry, I apologize, Todd. I
No,
keep getting long-winded
no,
on these
it's
answers, but
fine. Just keep talking. I love it.
yeah, no, it's a spirituality, and then it's the spirituality. It's the desire to pursue a path less traveled, and yeah, and just trying to push myself to a new
And it,
level. Even though like
yeah.
I'm never quite clear what I'm looking to achieve, but
And to expand on what you were saying about how you said that these storms feel like they're alive, I think there might even be more to that, because there's a lot of people that talk about the living earth. And, the weather patterns may have some resonance with the way the core is, the way the magma is, the way the tectonic plates are. There could be a much bigger cycle of things going on than we really know. And that's what I think is fascinating, is that a lot of us, we treat the earth like nothing more than dirt, and I believe that we're actually probably on something living, everything about it.
yeah, Todd, that's such a good point, and I don't even know how to elaborate on that. But like you see, you see movies and you see movies like Avatar, and you see their connection with Earth, and like I really do believe that, and I can't quite.
You
I believe there's more than we
Mhm,
understand,
for sure.
100%, and
And you're
I'm
connected to
on the
that in a
page.
way. You're experiencing that. So you can't find the words for it right now, but you're connected to it.
And I really do believe I can feel it.
Mm.
I can't, I can't, I have a hard time communicating it, but when we're out there, and from the first time I saw it to every time I've seen it ever since then, like it really felt like I was seeing a living being. Like it felt like I was seeing like something from out of this world, and it still feels like that this day.
You mentioned, did you say you're 37?
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm curious, is there an end game for storm chasing? Do you see yourself doing this as a 70-year-old man? Like where does this go?
Feels like my wife asked you to say that question. Um, yeah, like there's it's been 11 years. And 11 years, and some are sometimes good years where, we make a decent income, everything goes right. And there's been a lot of bad
Mhm.
years where we come out in the red and everything's looking pretty bleak, but never have I considered anything
Yeah.
else. It just, it's, it's never gotten boring. I've never considered it work. And like this, there, like I was saying, like I did 100 days straight, and so we're getting in at like 1, 2 a.m. We have to because we can shoot lightning. We capture tornadoes, we shoot lightning, and then we have to get in. We have to dump our cameras. We get to bed about 3 a.m. and we're back up at 7 a.m. and it hurts, but I'm so excited to get up. I never think, oh, another day, or like I have to go to work. And I've had real jobs, and
Mhm.
I've had that feeling. And I growing up, I always heard this term, love what you do and you never work a day in your life. And I was like, bullshit. Like that doesn't exist. I truly feel like I feel so grateful that I found that for myself here. And so the storms absolutely drive me, but I also love the road trip. Like, we get to cover about 3 provinces here in Canada, and then we'll cover, this year I did about 17, 18 states. And so you get to meet all sorts of people. You get to see all sorts of cultures and all sorts of landscapes. Like I love that road trip. I love driving. Like I don't see why I would ever stop. I might not do it as
Well,
much as I do right now, but
to elaborate on your story a little bit there, one of the things I enjoy about this podcast is I get to meet people that do extraordinary things. And the first episode of this new season, season 6, is Lucy Westlake returned, and Lucy is the youngest American female to summit Mount Everest.
get out of here.
And she did it when she was 14 years old. So it was incredible, her story. So I would talk to her about how she got involved in doing this. How are you a little kid going, I want to climb that mountain, and I think that's
Yeah,
really fascinating. So this over time, this podcast has evolved into inviting people on that do extraordinary things. And what you do, I think there's a lot of people that would think of a tornado hunter like they would think of a ghost hunter, and it's
sure.
very reality show stuff, that's what they would think. But it's not. Like, what you're doing is you're bringing people closer to these things. And that's what's beautiful about it, because you can get as close as you can to these tornadoes, closer than anyone else is ever going to go. You can show the beauty of them, and you can show the danger of them. And there's not a lot of people that are doing it. You can probably count it on a few hands how many people are doing it and doing it right. And in that regard, it's a good and decent public service, because who's going to get a chance to see those? Who could really understand those without seeing your pictures or seeing your videos? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate that. Yeah, like
Someone has to
I
document the stuff, right? So to show the world, right? That's what you have to do. You were there when the largest tornado was on the ground. Probably
yeah,
not a lot of people were there. And when I mean, maybe there were a lot of people, maybe there were dozens of people there, but considering the amount of people in the world, you were there and you were able to experience that, witness that, tell the story about that, document that, show pictures of that. And that's a big thing. I mean, that's journalism in a way, that's documentarianism in a way, far more than the adventure aspect of this. So if you can keep doing it and you're good at it, you should keep doing it.
yeah. I really appreciate it, man. And yeah, I'm really proud of what we do. And a lot of that pride comes from being one of the few. Like it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work, and it definitely takes some educated risk. But that's what I love about it. I love that it's
Is,
that we are one of a few.
is there a dream location that you haven't gone to that you want to go to?
For storm
Hmm.
chasing, Patag- Argentina. Sorry,
Argentina.
Argentina.
Okay.
I want to go to Patagonia, but Argentina for the storms.
What would be
Yeah.
so great about the storms there?
Uh, well, one, you're in South America. Two is they get some of the biggest hail in the world. This year, they always hold the
Mm.
records, but this year they increased the record again. It was just over basketball. I think it was 13.5 inches in diameter. Ice chunk 13 inches in diameter, so that terrifies me. Like that would definitely do some serious damage, but they get really beautiful storms in a really cool landscape that we quite don't get to see. Now you guys have similar landscape in the States, but we don't get the storms there. They get the storms in like this mountainous rolling
Mm.
terrain. And just, yeah, and just having to do it there. And also you take away a lot of the luxuries of the radars that we have in the States. Like essentially, if we go to Argentina, we'd be going back 20, 30 years in how to
Mm.
forecast, more back to the days of Twister. And that's also what I would love to do. For me, the harder it is, the more enticing it is.
Now, does Australia get weather like that? Does Australia have tornadoes?
They do. They do have tornadoes. A lot of times they have land spouts that get mistaken
Mm.
for
I
tornadoes. Now
see.
they are known to have their tornadoes, but the land spouts, because it's such flat terrain and you have such dusty, dry foundation, that the winds will be whipping along, and like you might see a dust devil on the side of the road. They get those, and Arizona gets them too, where they're going to be like all the way up to the sky, and they do get mistaken for a tornado, and they can sometimes be as dangerous as a small tornado. But as far as I know, they don't get a whole lot of tornadoes because, again, it takes that hot and cold air, and they don't have a whole lot of that cold air.
Sure, I see. Now,
Yeah.
is this a myth? The fire NATO, was that real or was it a myth? Did it really
Oh,
happen?
Sharknado is the myth.
Sharknado is the myth.
Firenado
Yeah,
is.
Fire NATO's
Yeah.
real.
I do a lot of school talks, and that always comes up. There's always kids too, and sometimes too old, like somebody in grade 12 asking about Sharknadoes. But Firenadoes, yes. And so what happens is now there has been times where a storm producing a tornado supercell storm has moved over top of a wildfire and has produced a tornado. So that has happened. But more often, what happens if you see images of a firenado, and we saw lots around this year, is the fire actually creates its own weather environment.
Mm,
And that makes sense. Like the fire is putting off such heat
interesting.
that anything above it is considered cold, because anything is cold compared to that kind of heat. And so as that hot air rises, and that's how these storms are created anyway, is the heat hits the ground all day long, that hot air rises, and that hot air is like a packet of hot air that drives up and it creates circulation. So as the hot air rises, it starts to twist. And so that's what happens with a firenado. It'll create that rotation, and it'll go, it might last for 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, but that's about it.
I
You're not
see.
going to see it last much longer than 10 minutes because it's not truly a
I
storm.
see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, as we're wrapping up here today, what would you say to a person who wants to get into storm chasing or tornado hunting? How would they get started? What would your advice be?
The first thing I would do is I would try to link up with others. And I know that can be tough in our world. Especially after COVID, I find people have gotten so antisocial and hidden behind. And I feel sometimes too. I get those anxieties talking to people. But if you can reach out to them on social media, whether it's Instagram or Twitter, I find Twitter works really well, or maybe LinkedIn. But if you find other storm chasers, just reach out to them. And it's really a numbers game, like anything else. Like if you ask 10, there's a good chance one's going to say yes. And ask them if you can come out. Say, hey, listen, I have a week off of work during April or May. Can I come and join you? And there's a good chance you guys will hop on a Zoom call. They'll see if you guys get along, and they'll do it. And the reason is because these storm chasers are always looking for other people who want to chase clouds, and because it is tough to find others, and they want to split gas, they want to split hotels, and if you start to learn a little bit of storm chasing, well, it makes their job safer as well. And so that's what I would do. That's the first thing I would do. Storm chasing or any other industry is just ask somebody, hey, like, can I bug you? Can I ask you questions about it? Can I join you? And I find that works for anything in life. Sorry, not to get preachy, Todd, but like, everybody got help from somebody else, and everybody started at the bottom. And so many people, no matter how big they are willing to help out others.
So Ricky, if I make a $5,000 handshake with you, can I get a ride in Brutus down Tornado Alley? It's going to cost me more than that.
No. You can come up for free. You just can't sue me. We can't. I used to do tours, but I can't do tours anymore.
Liability.
Because they won't give us liability insurance.
Yeah, for sure. How can people find you out there on the interwebs?
Head to tornadowatch.com. Yeah, if you head to tornadowatch.com, that has all my information, photos, videos. If you are on social media, any platform, just my name, Ricky Forbes. So RICKYFORBES. So Tornado Watch or Ricky Forbes, and you'll find me.
Perfect. Ricky, thanks so much for coming out tonight. Great interview. And I hope to see you out in Oklahoma sometime, I think, in the future.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Todd.
Take care and have a good night, okay?
Yeah, you too.
Metacortex Publishing hopes that you've enjoyed this presentation.
Please take a moment to listen to some other podcast offerings from Metacortex Publishing.
Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective, through exhaustive research, and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
The No Earthly Explanation podcast investigates the things that are unexplainable. Hosted by world-renowned investigative researcher Donald R. Schmidt and scientist Ellie Ringo. Follow them as they look for evidence for things that have no earthly explanation. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
I'm Amber Rose, the religious hippie, and I host the podcast A Catholic's Perspective. Join me every 2 weeks as I release episodes targeted towards helping young Catholics navigate their ever-changing secular world while staying strong in their faith. Whether you are a Catholic or not, all are welcome here. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to tune in. You can find A Catholic's Perspective on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I hope to see you there. Bye!
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fischer and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.